Hunter Biden is getting off the canvas. He's not going to be anybody's doormat anymore. And a second time in 3 days has filed another lawsuit against his tormentors and people that try to reveal Hunter Biden's private, confidential information covered by federal statutes that shouldn't be revealed and shouldn't be part of the public discussion. We know why it's being done. It's being done so it could be used against Joe Biden and his election efforts by the GOP. We know that Hunter Biden is merely being his ethics, his integrity, his values, his personal privacy rights are being sacrificed on the altar of political expediency and political ambition by Donald Trump. It's obvious. Now, Hunter Biden is fighting back. Last week, we reported on Legal AF that he filed a lawsuit against Garrett Ziegler in federal court in California about the photos and other emails, which obviously resulted in somebody cracking and hacking Hunter Biden's personal laptop, cell phone, and other materials. And Garrett Ziegler, who worked for the Trump administration and the Trump campaign, was part of that process. And now he, along with 9 others, have been sued. But that's not the latest. The latest is today, the Internal Revenue Service itself, because of the actions of 2 of its investigators, Gary Shapley and Joe Ziegler, have been sued in the District of Columbia federal court by Hunter Biden. All of this newfound muscularity in the defense of Hunter Biden is really because he hired a new lawyer. He hired Abby Lowell, a longtime successful lawyer for a lot of Democratic causes, who has decided enough is enough. You know, that it's one thing for Hunter Biden to admit that he didn't pay his taxes on time and get them paid, and he's not being prosecuted for that, or admit that he had a drug problem very publicly in memoirs, or admit that he sent, he had a bender for 3 years and did really bad things that make him embarrassed and embarrassing to his family. But that doesn't mean, his junk photos should be spread through Congress, or that the internal revenue agents that were responsible for the investigation should go on national TV, or if they don't do it, their lawyers go on national TV more than 20 times to drag Hunter Biden through the mud using private information that should be used against no American citizen, not just one that happens to be the son of the president. No one would be safe if this was the law, and it shouldn't be. And Hunter Biden's right to seek justice, yes, it keeps him in the news. Yes, it makes him have to admit certain things, like those were the pictures of his junk and what pics that were sent around. And yes, he had a drug problem. And yes, he bought a gun. And yes, he didn't he didn't pay his taxes on time. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden. Joe Biden gave birth to the kid. After that, the guy's 54 years old. He's on his own. It's as to what he did. I didn't vote for Hunter Biden. I wouldn't vote for Hunter Biden. And that's not the issue here. The issue is trying to hold the father responsible for the sins of his son. And that's what's being done here and being fought back against. The new lawsuit, I think, is fascinating. And I'm going to show you a clip to give you an example of what Gary Shapley, the senior investigator, has done that's so wrong. He admits in one breath of the clip to CBS News several months ago that he can't reveal the name of the target of his investigation, but then sits there and basically reveals through the reporting that it's Hunter Biden, and then reveals all the things he's not supposed to say. That not only that, he was cautioned by the investigators of Congress not to reveal the information he was providing to them secret and confidential. He even says in the same breath on this interview, this clip you're going to see, Joe Shapley says, I can't reveal that. It's against secrecy laws. He knows there's secrecy laws. He's been an investigator for 14 years, yet he thinks it's fine to drag Hunter Biden through the mud. Okay, maybe the mud of his own making, but that's why we have privacy laws. That's why the IRS can't put up on a billboard in Times Square your tax return information or information about how they're going to use an enforcement mechanism against you. I mean, they can do a lot of things, but they're not supposed to do that. Let me show you the clip that's gotten the lawyers for Hunter Biden up in arms. Let's play the clip.
We turn now to a CBS News exclusive. For more than 3 years, the Department of Justice has been investigating the president's son, Hunter Biden, for possible tax crimes. Last fall, FBI sources told us they had sufficient evidence to bring charges. CBS's Jim Axelrod spoke to the IRS agent who is blowing the whistle on what he says was preferential treatment in his first public interview.
When I took control of this particular investigation, I immediately saw it, was way outside the norm of what I've experienced in the past.
Gary Shapley is a supervisory special agent for the IRS, where he's worked for 14 years. In January 2020, he was assigned to what he calls a high-profile investigation.
Who's the subject of the investigation?
I can't confirm or deny the subject of this investigation.
Why not?
Because, part of the tax secrecy laws don't allow it.
Shapley can't say it, but CBS News has learned the investigation was the probe of Hunter Biden by the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney in Delaware. Senior Biden administration officials have vowed to let it run its course without interference.
It's not restricted in his investigation in any way.
But CBS News has obtained this letter Shapley's lawyers sent to Congress Monday, alleging irregularities in DOJ's handling of the investigation. Shapley is seeking legal protections from Congress so he can share specifics of his allegations.
There was multiple steps that were slow-walked at the direction of the Department of Justice.
Had you ever encountered that before?
I have not, no. These deviations from normal process, and each and every time it seemed to always benefit the subject.
Shapley says he decided to blow the whistle after a heated meeting last October with federal prosecutors.
It was my red line meeting. It just got to that point where that switch was turned on, and I just couldn't silence my conscience anymore.
Did you let prosecutors know you were unhappy?
I don't think I can answer that.
Hunter Biden has denied any wrongdoing.
Like civil servants.
The IRS agent told us he is a registered Republican. His whistleblowing is being assisted by an advocacy group with past ties to the GOP. But Shapley says this is not about politics.
Why do you want to navigate these waters?
I don't want to do any of this. I took an oath of office, and when I saw the egregiousness of some of these things, it no longer became a choice for me. It's not something that I want to do. It's something that I feel like I have to do.
The IRS told us it can't comment on specific cases, but is committed to supporting whistleblowers in general. Both the DOJ and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware declined to comment. Nora?
Jim Axelrod, thank you.
All right. That's one of 20. I'll tell you who's really trying to use this to his advantage and get the publicity in order to win a Republican Party West Virginia Senate seat is the lawyer for Joe Shapley, Tristan Levitt. He's decided he's going to be a big-time celebrity by going on and talking about the whistleblower information that his client is going to testify or has testified to the House MAGA. And in doing so, he himself reveals and violates the Privacy Act and all the things that govern how the IRS is supposed to keep secret and confidential the information of taxpayers and not just use it because it's politically expedient or because it makes for good fodder for Fox News. That's not supposed to happen. And so it's time, and I agree with Hunter Biden in fighting back. I know it keeps him in the news and it makes it a part of the news story cycle for Joe Biden, but that doesn't mean that Hunter Biden should lay down and not protect his rights. I mean, as the lawsuit says, and I think artfully, and you can tell this is the work of Abby Lowell, first paragraph, first sentence, Mr. Biden is the son of the President of the United States. Let's get that out in the open. He has all the same responsibilities as any other American citizen, and the IRS can and should take certain steps that he abide by those responsibilities. In other words, he's got to pay his taxes like everybody else. But similarly, Mr. Biden has no fewer or lesser rights than any other American citizen, and no government agency or government agent has free rein to violate his rights simply because of who he is. Yet the IRS and its agents have conducted themselves under a presumption that the rights that apply to every other American citizen do not apply to Mr. Biden. Okay, this has to do with the investigation for 5 years. The fact that Joe Biden cooperated fully with the IRS investigation, but he expected that the IRS would be committed to complying with their legal obligations under the Privacy Act which is at 5 U.S. Code Section 552A. Instead, the lawsuit says in paragraph 3 that the IRS agents have targeted and sought to embarrass Mr. Biden via public statements to the media in which they and their representatives, that's the lawyers like Tristan Levitt, have disclosed confidential information about a private citizen's tax matters. That's not supposed to happen in America. While Mr. Biden has been the victim of various leaks regarding the IRS investigation previously, most recently, and here's the nub, here's the gravamen of the suit, 2 IRS agents, Mr. Gary Shapley, we showed you the video, and Mr. Joseph Ziegler and their attorneys raised the stakes to unprecedented levels with their numerous public appearances and statements in violation of the Internal Revenue Code to publicly smear Mr. Biden. That's the problem. They're not allowed, as the complaint goes on to say, to go on at least 20 interviews and during that time reveal confidential information about the interaction between the IRS and the Department of Justice about Hunter Biden. There's a reason we don't know as American people the nitty-gritty about the IRS prosecutions of people. It's because there's a Privacy Act that protects them. As paragraph 8 of the complaint says, that despite these straightforward directions and explicit reminders by Congress of the repercussions that would result from violations, these IRS agents and the chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means, Congressman Jason Smith, all proceeded in their public campaign to selectively disclose certain confidential tax information to embarrass and inflict harm on Mr. Biden. And this includes going on Fox News, CBS, The Megyn Kelly Show, John Solomon Reports, and interviews of Mr. Ziegler that aired on CNN, The Megyn Kelly Show, and John Solomon Reports, in which they, in an unsubstantiated and selective way, chose allegations of potentially criminal behavior and publicized them. All right, so, what do we have here in terms of the case that's now been filed? It's an example, a good example of Hunter Biden, that he's telling the world and telegraphing to everybody he's not going to be the punching bag any longer for those that want to get to his father. As we've said on Legal AF and on the MeidasTouch Network, if there's a case against Joe Biden that shows he was corrupt, that he took bribes, that he influenced, peddled, that he used his position as vice president or otherwise to line his pockets or those of his family, he should be indicted. But I've yet to see that evidence. Not one attorney general or U.S. attorney is investigating that, as far as we know. And the MAGA Republicans have brought witness after witness in front of their Oversight and Judiciary Committee to have them all blow up in their face. It should come as no shock that family members of elected officials often, benefit financially from being in the family. They do. They get put on boards that the rest of us are not entitled to be on or not asked to be on. They get paid money as part of the boards. People just believe, especially in foreign countries, that if your last name is the same as some president or vice president, it's good. It's helpful. There's a halo effect about that. Whether you go the next step and you influence peddle and you make it a pay-to-play situation, that's a different story. But where has that been proven? And where is the evidence of that? And continuing, I have a bit of sympathy for Hunter Biden, because if his last name was Hunter Goldberg, right, or Hunter Schwartz, or Hunter Napolitano, I don't think we'd be talking about this, because it would be a lot less interesting to the Republicans, MAGA, and their efforts to take down Joe Biden. It's just make weight by the Republicans in order to balance, in their view, the scale because of the weight of other evidence that their candidate of choice is a criminal. Nothing says I'm likely guilty like 94 felony counts in 4 indictments across 3 states, New York, Georgia, 4, Washington, and Florida, and 7 trials in 9 months. innocent people don't usually have this big a set of legal problems. But why should the family, whether it's the daughter of Joe Biden who had her diaries, her deepest, darkest personal thoughts and battles with addiction and battles with self-worth and self-loathing and all the things that we would never want anyone in our life or ourselves to have their diaries revealed. Think about that, to any other person. Why is that okay? Because her last name is Biden? Why is it okay that private tax information and investigative materials that should never see the light of day, and there's a statute on it, a criminal statute on it, Privacy Act statute on it, why is it okay? Because the last name is Biden. We're not talking about a two-tier justice system here. There's a one-tier justice system, well, at least for white privileged people. We'll put aside that really is a two-tier justice system concerning black and brown and minority Americans and people that are in the LGBTQ plus community. Put that aside. It's not the purpose of this particular hot take, but let's keep it in our mind. But for white privileged people and people of power, if you do the crime, you're going to do the time and get indicted. Donald Trump is indicted because of his own bad acts before he was president, while he was president, and after he's been president. And if Joe Biden if there's evidence against Joe Biden committing crimes, bring it. Bring it. Let the American people evaluate it. I'll be the first one to run Joe Biden out on a rail out of the Democratic Party if he shocks the world. And after 50 years of being in the public eye and being transparently evaluated as the youngest senator ever elected in the history of America and the oldest president ever elected in the history of America, to say he doesn't have a body of work with all the warts included that we can evaluate before he took office, before we voted for him for president, is asinine. If you want to show me that guy, that Joe Biden lined his own pockets in a power play while he was in office, like I said, I'll vote against him. But similarly, then I demand the same thing from my fellow Americans who support MAGA. Your guy gets convicted. Your guy goes to jail or whatever. I would expect that you don't put a criminal in the White House, not knowingly. I mean, it's one thing to think, well, I hold my nose. Donald Trump's a weird, self-aggrandizing, money laundering business person who went bankrupt 4 times, but let's see what he can do in the White House. That'll be fun. But now you know. Now you know what he did in the White House. Can't bury your head in the sand anymore and talk about, I like my presidents like strongmen, like fascist dictators in various countries. You know where they all end up, right? And so if your guy gets convicted, I would expect that you would not check the box to send him back to the White House. But that's me, and that's the Democratic Party. I sit at the corner of politics and law to report things like Hunter Biden fighting back and stop being a punching bag. He doesn't have to be a piñata for everybody to pick up a stick and hit in violation of the laws that we have on our books to protect everyone, rich and poor, powerful and weak, named Biden or not. And what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And that's what this hot take is about. I do it exclusively for the MeidasTouch network. I do hot takes like this about every day, sometimes more, depending upon developments. I sit on that valuable real estate of the corner of U.S. law and politics, so you don't have to, and I can bring you that analysis. Join me on Legal AF, our podcast, also on the MeidasTouch YouTube channel and audio platform. We do it every Wednesday and Saturday. It's about an hour long. If you don't like the hour-long podcast concept, come for the hot takes. Go over to my YouTube channel. Well, it's the Legal AF YouTube channel and MeidasTouch YouTube channel playlist. You can find Michael Popok there. And give me a thumbs up here. It helps with the ratings. Until the next hot take, until the next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.